Hey everyone, Regulation G is finally at the end, taking us into the typical double restricted format everyone was expecting with Regulation I. Now, after my intense battles at EUIC, which you can hear about in my previous video, check it out, I haven't really had much time to play any more of Regulation G. Whether that's locals, grassroots tournaments, or the March Global Challenge, my schedule never really matched up with them. But that all ended a few weeks ago with April's Global Challenge, in which I was determined to enter, and hopefully do well enough to win some big championship points. Now, so far this season, I've managed to earn 192 championship points, and with it looking very unlikely for me to be able to attend any other big events this season, a World's Invitation doesn't appear to be in the cards for me this year. However, Play Pokemon recently announced the new Ace Trainer Reward Program, where trainers with 200 CP or more get some cool exclusive rewards at the end of the season. So, this global challenge can be just the thing to tip me over the edge and get me that Ace Trainer Reward status. Since this will probably be my last tournament in Regulation G, I thought I'd go with my bread and butter, which I've mentioned several videos now, my Zamazenta team. It's been a few weeks since I last played, so if I'm a little rusty, I thought it would be better to go with a team I know than a team I didn't. In fact, all other global challenges I've mentioned on the channel, I used teams I hadn't practiced much with before, such as my Calyrex team and my Miraidon team. Hey, now that I think about it, 1, 2, 3, all these teams fulfill another slot on my bingo board. Don't know how I missed that. I've managed to do quite a good job filling most of this out. If only I could do better at big events. Maybe next season. Anyway, let's talk about how my matches went in the Global Challenge. My first match was up against a Kyogre team, and really helped me get back into the swing of things. I led Zamazenta and Ogerpon against their Whimsicott and Urshifu. Looking back at the footage, I can tell I was really struggling to commit to a decision, but in the end, I terrored Zamazenta to Dragon to make sure that they didn't try anything crafty, and Behemoth bashed the Whimsicott, while Ogerpon Horn Leeched the Urshifu. They then protected their Urshifu and taunted Ogerpon with Whimsicott, while Behemoth Bash brought Whimsicott down to its Focus Sash. Not wanting them to also taunt Zamazenta next turn, I protect it, as in the end, their Whimsicott tried hitting Zamazenta with Moonblast, and then used Ogerpon to KO the Whimsicott with Horn Leech, and Urshifu terrored to Ghost and used Close Combat to put Ogerpon to low HP. With Whimsicott KO'd, out comes Chien-Pao. Crucially, they never got Tailwind up. Furthermore, I know Sash was on the Whimsicott, so barring a crit from Chien-Pao, Icicle Crash shouldn't be able to KO with Zamazenta. So I body press into it, while Ogerpon goes for a Horn Leech against the Urshifu to try and keep itself alive. Things mostly go to plan, with Zamazenta living an Icicle Crash and not flinching, so body press gets the KO on Chien-Pao, while Horn Leech just doesn't about KO the Urshifu, and unfortunately, the health regained from it wasn't enough to stop another close combat from Urshifu from KOing Ogerpon. However, with 2 close combats now out, its defenses are super low. But I send out Fluttermane as they send out Kyogre. With my Zamazenta untaunted and the threat of Wide Guard in my pocket, I feel pretty good. But I still want to threaten the Kyogre a bunch, so I double into it with Body Press and an Icy Wind, because I'm pretty confident with its lower defenses Urshifu won't survive the Icy Wind. In the end, they use Aqua Jet into my Fluttermane with the Urshifu, but even with the Rain, and probably the Mystic Water, I'm guessing, it's not enough to KO, so Icy Wind manages to connect with both Urshifu and Kyogre, doing a little chip to Kyogre, but also, crucially, getting the KO on Urshifu. My Zamazenta then body presses the Kyogre, which leaves it with very little HP left. The Kyogre does retaliate with an Ice Beam to KO my Zamazenta, but at that point I still have Fluttermane and a full HP Rillaboom, so when I bring that out, they forfeit the match. My second match is also against the Kyogre team, but this one's rocking double Genies with Tornadus and Landorus. Into this, I lead my Ogerpon and Zamazenta once again, and they lead Serena and Tornadus. I Spiky Shield Ogerpon to keep it safe, and try to KO Serena with a Body Press. They decide to go for Taunt on my Zamazenta with Tornadus, and then my Body Press barely misses the KO on the Serena. But thankfully, the Serena attacks into Ogerpon with Power Whip, which is a contact move, so the Spiky Shield does the chip that gets to KO. So this was a clean turn on paper, but it does allow them to bring Landorus in for free, and I can't Wide Guard anymore, so this might actually cause some problems. I do make a mistake this turn, feeling the pressure of the Global Challenge and still feeling a little rusty. In the end, I don't terror my Zamazenta Dragon this turn, and just click 2 attacks. So the incoming Tailwind into a ground move from Landorus could be my downfall. But while they do go for Tailwind, they do also click Sandsear Storm as Landorus' move, which outside of the rain, misses Zamazenta, lucky me, and barely hurts Ogerpon. This thankfully bails me out of a sticky situation, as Ogerpon can now KO their Landorus with Ivy Cudgel, and Behemoth Ash does hit Tornadus decently hard as well, so they send out Kyogre. I am now smart enough this turn to remember to terror my Zamazenta to Dragon, and protect my Ogerpon once again. This allows my team to live the full power Water Spout coming in from Kyogre, and as well as the Bleak Windstorm from Tornadus. And once again, my Zamazenta can use Body Press into Kyogre, bring it to low HP. With the start of the next turn, Taunt has now ended, so they forfeit the match, as Zamazenta's Wide Guard stuffs out most of their offense, and I still have 4 Pokemon on my side, making it almost impossible for them to win. Doing good so far? It's now time for round 3, where I'm up against a Zamazenta team. Unfortunately, I do lose this one, as my lead of Fluttermane and Entei can do great damage against their lead of Chien-Pao and Zamazenta, but between my Icy Wind missing their Chien-Pao as well as my Entei's Sacred Fire also missing it, my first turn is kind of a dud, while they get a great first turn, managing to injure my Fluttermane with Chien-Pao and Oko my Entei with their Zamazenta's Body Press. With Entei down, I bring in my own Chien-Pao. Well, this still isn't a game-losing position, but for some reason I don't read the Zamazenta Protect and play it a bit too safe, protecting my Fluttermane, meaning I lose the chance to KO their Chien-Pao this turn off a double up. Not KOing the Chien-Pao last turn leaves me quite vulnerable this turn, as they can Sucker Punch my Fluttermane to KO it, and then Body Press my Chien-Pao to break its sash, while all my Chien-Pao can really do is little chip to their own Chien-Pao. So all I can do now is bring in my Zamazenta, and together with my Chien-Pao's help, I can double into their Zamazenta to KO it, but I lose my own Chien-Pao in the process. It's a 3v1 now, and while my Zamazenta does have potential to beat both the Chien-Pao and the incoming Fluttermane, it cannot beat the Chi-Yu in the back without overheat miss from it, which I don't get. Right, after that loss, I lock in for the next 2 games and managed to win them both. The first one was against another Zamazenta team. The other team was Calyrex Ice Rider team, that I really hate playing against. Both opponents, however, never choose to leverage their speed of control against me. The Zamazenta player led Pelipper Urshifu, but quickly lost to Urshifu turn 1 before it could do anything, as my Zamazenta outsped it and one-shot it with Body Press. Their Pelipper was able to spread some crazy damage across my team and even KO my Zamazenta at one point, but it couldn't stop my Fluttermane from scaring out their Terror Dragon Zamazenta, allowing it and my Chien-Pao to mop up the rest of their team. The Calyrex Ice Rider player led Ogerpon Rock and Calyrex Ice Rider, the perfect way to guarantee Trick Room. So I tried to stall out the Trick Room from the get-go by delaying my attacks, only attacking with one of my Pokemon, so they don't get a free switch in from the double up into Ogerpon. But in the end, they just protect their Calyrex turn 1 and try attacking into my Chien-Pao, which was the Pokemon I protected this turn. So on the next turn, I do a double up into the Calyrex Ice Rider, who terrors, or the Ogerpon protects. The double up doesn't manage to KO the Calyrex because of its terror, but instead of going for Trick Room like I expect it to, it just high horsepowers into my Zamazenta, which does do a lot of damage, but doesn't get the KO. This allows me to set up the perfect double KO next turn with Icicle Crash into Ogerpon and Body Press into Calyrex Ice Rider. I kind of get an explanation for the lack of Trick Room setup at the beginning, as one of the Pokemon on the back is Landorus, but it's also supported by Amoonguss, so it doesn't really explain it. Anyway, so they can get a KO against my Zamazenta with that duo, but it doesn't take much for me to finish the rest of them off. The following match against the Koraidon team is also very close. I lead Fluttermane Entei against Tornadus Incineroar. I do what I usually do in these cases and double up into the Incineroar with a Stomping Tantrum and Moonblast, but the Tailwind from Tornadus allows it to outspeed my Entei and pivot out of a parting shot into Koraidon, which doesn't take too much damage from the -1 Stomping Tantrum from Entei. I'm expecting the Koraidon to go for Fluttermane at this point, and with its potential to Terror, I protect my Fluttermane and let Entei attack into it again. I thankfully block a Flame Charge from the Koraidon, and Bleak Wind doesn't manage to KO Entei, who scores a nasty critical hit and putting Koraidon on low HP. From here I see a chance to KO the Koraidon, so I double into it and Terror my Fluttermane to Water type. The incoming Bleak Wind from Tornadus does hurt Fluttermane and Entei pretty badly, but instead of going for Fluttermane, the Koraidon goes for my Entei. It does get the KO, but then I can return the favour with a Moonblast into Koraidon. I probably should have used Shadow Ball here, as it would have been a lot safer into a potential Terra Fire. I now send in Zamazenta as they bring in Rillaboom. That's not great for my Terra Water Fluttermane. So once again, I protect it and Body Press, keeping the Fluttermane safe from a Fake Out, and also putting the Rillaboom low as Bleak Wind Storm doesn't do too much to Zamazenta. Next turn, knowing that my Chien-Pao won't do too well against the Incineroar on the back, I switch my Fluttermane out for it, sacrificing it to the double up Grassy Glide and Bleak Wind Storm, but my Zamazenta does get the KO on Rillaboom with Body Press. So now it's just Incineroar and Tornadus versus Fluttermane and Zamazenta. I protect the Fluttermane once again to avoid a Fake Out from Incineroar and try to attack with Zamazenta, but they read this, terroring their Incineroar to Water and using Fake Out on my Zamazenta instead, as the Tornadus gets to set up Tailwind again. I then Wide Guard with my Zamazenta, expecting them to use Bleak Wind Storm and hoping to KO the Tornadus with my Fluttermane so I can then 2v1 the Incineroar. But interestingly enough, they set up the Sun with Sunny Day, and then Incineroar hits Zamazenta with a Flare Blitz. Wasn't expecting it to carry that move, but thankfully my Zamazenta managed to live it on 7 HP, but unfortunately, Tornadus lives Fluttermane's Moonblast. Next turn, I still Wide Guard, knowing a Bleak Wind Storm would end this match for me, and use Icy Wind Fluttermane to try and get damage on both Pokemon. This turn, Wide Guard does successfully block a Bleak Wind Storm, and thankfully, Incineroar chooses to use Knockoff into Fluttermane instead of going to finish off Zamazenta, who takes it well enough as Icy Wind hits both Pokemon, almost KOing the Tornadus. I try to keep this up next turn, going for a Moonblast to secure the KO into Tornadus, but it protects! Incineroar uses the opportunity to take out my Zamazenta. So now I'm in a 1v2 and it's not looking good. But but Tailwind is down. So once again, I use Icy Wind, which allows me to KO the Tornadus and does a little bit more chip into Incineroar, as I need all I can get, as its knockoff leaves Fluttermane in the red. Incineroar is now just above 50% of its HP. I don't think Moonblast will do enough, but I gotta go for it and hope for the best. Moonblast connects into the Incineroar and does a critical hit. Incineroar goes down and I win the game. I think the crit was necessary. Maybe a high roll could have done it, but in the end, I'm not too sure. Either way, that ends my 6th battle in the Global Challenge so far, placing me at 1,776th. As a note, I started my matches on the final day, and despite trying to make time for this, I was still a bit busy. One of the benefits of starting later, and having a strong start, it should increase my chances of facing higher ranked players and jumping up in rating a lot quicker. But after that intense match, I decided to take a break and return in a few hours. Now, upon my return, I played 4 more matches for my next little session, bringing me to 10 total matches. However, the recording for these matches got corrupted, and I didn't take notes for these as I was supposed to have the footage to look back on. But yeah, that didn't work out. So all I have to go off of is the home data. So I know I managed to win 3 out of 4 of these matches and put myself in the top 1,000. With that, I took another break and hung out with some friends. Near the end of the day, around 10 PM, with only a few hours left in the tournament, I checked to see how far I had fallen on the ratings, and unfortunately, I was pushed out of the top 1,000. So, with a little bit of time left, I decided I should go back in and try and do some more matches. The first of these matches is up against the Calyrex Ice Rider team. I lead Zamazenta Chien-Pao, and they lead Landorus Whimsicott. They read my first turn pretty well, protecting their Landorus and hitting Chien-Pao with Moonblast, breaking its Focus Sash, while Zamazenta breaks Whimsicott's Focus Sash. Next turn, I protect Chien-Pao and KO Whimsicott with my Terra Dragon Zamazenta. They do manage to hit it hard with an Earth Power, bringing it to about half of its HP. From here, they can bring in Ogerpon, and between both the Ogerpon and the Landorus, they can get a KO on both my Chien-Pao and my Zamazenta, but I do manage to bring them to low HP. All I have left in the back is Entei and Fluttermane. I make a mistake here by not using Extreme Speeds for some extra chip damage on one of my opponent's Pokemon. While Fluttermane does get off an Icy Wind onto both targets, it doesn't do enough to KO either of them, as Landorus moves first and Oko's Entei with an Earth Power. So now it's up to Fluttermane to 1v3 with the 2 Pokemon currently out at low HP. They play smart and protect the Ogerpon so I don't get a double KO this turn. So when Calyrex Ice Rider comes out, I have no chance of winning. I lose the match. I've still got a chunk of time left, so I can still pull it back and get a placement in the top 1,000. However, my next match is against the dreaded Calyrex, Shadow Rider, Weezing, Dondozo team. Oh no. Yeah, I really struggle with this matchup, and by the time they get their Dondozo Tatsugiri out, I haven't managed to KO any of their other Pokemon, and only get to do mind chip damage to the Dondozo with my Fluttermane before it gets a double KO on them. So while I do manage to take out the Dondozo with my Zamazenta and Ogerpon in the back, by the time I manage to do that, I'm 2-1 down to beat the Calyrex Shadow Rider that comes out. 2 losses is rough, and I'm just trying to climb that extra bit, but I'm determined to see this through. My next match is against quite the interesting Calyrex Shadow Rider team. They lead Chien-Pao and Raging Bolt against my Fluttermane and Entei. I expect at least one priority move to come out this turn into my Fluttermane, so I protect it, which ends up blocking a Sucker Punch from the Chien-Pao, as my Entei's Sacred Fire brings it down to 1 HP. The Raging Bolt does Terra to Electric this turn, and its Thunderbolt hits Entei quite hard. Next turn, Fluttermane uses Icy Wind as Entei goes for another Sacred Fire. No priority moves comes out from either of my opponent's Pokemon, so I get to KO the Chien-Pao with Icy Wind and hit the Raging Bolt hard with a Sacred Fire, as it does tons of damage to my Fluttermane with a Thunderbolt. Out comes Calyrex Shadow Rider. I kind of gamble here by predicting that the Raging Bolt won't attack into my Entei and Terra it into a normal type and target the Raging Bolt with another Sacred Fire, while once again protecting my Fluttermane. And I get it right, with the Raging Bolt going for Thunderclap into Fluttermane, which fails, and Calyrex Shadow Rider uses Astral Barrage, which Entei is now immune to. So both my Pokemon are safe, as Entei can secure a KO onto the Raging Bolt. Landorus Furion then comes out, but they forfeit on the turn, realizing there's nothing they can do to stop the rest of my team, especially when my Fluttermane outspeeds their Calyrex. Despite that solid win, we're still quite far behind from my point goal, but then I get potentially a stroke of luck. I get placed against a trainer with a high rating, almost 1700. This could be the big point gain that I need. They're using a Terrapagos team with both Ditto and Screamtail. That's pretty interesting, I don't think I've fought this before. I lead, once again, Fluttermane and Entei. I realise I really like doing this, it's just such a comfortable lead. Against Ogerpon and Terrapagos. I go for an Icy Wind with a Sacred Fire into Terrapagos, expecting it to Terra or something, but instead the Ogerpon Terrors. Icy Wind doesn't do too much damage to it now that it's just a pure rock type, but the speed drop does allow Entei to go first and halve Terrapagos' HP and burn it with the Sacred Fire. Ivy Cudgel then goes into Fluttermane, With the Terror boost and a critical hit, it easily KOs it. Then the single target Terror Starstorm halves Entei's HP, so I decide to bring in Zamazenta. This turn I then body press into Trapghost and switch my Entei out into Rillaboom so it doesn't get KO'd by the Ogerpon. But the Ogerpon also switches this turn into Screamtail as I get a free KO into the Trapghost with body press. Ogerpon then comes in again. I'm not too sure what the Screamtail is going to do, but I know it can be super disruptive to my team. So I fake it out and also use Behemoth Bash into it to try and get a KO, as I expect the Ogerpon to protect, which I do get right, but it turns out they switched out the Screamtail for Ditto, turning it into a +2 defense Zamazenta, so both my fake out and Behemoth Bash barely scratch it, and the Grassy Terrain I set up healing it doesn't make it any easier for me. Rillaboom then goes for Grassy Glide into the Ogerpon that switches out into Screamtail. The Grassy Glide doesn't do too much damage to it, while I Terra my Zamazenta to a Dragon type and body press into their Ditto for about just under half its HP. The Ditto Zamazenta then body presses into my Rillaboom, who just about survives it. Next turn, I double up onto the Screamtail with Grassy Glide and Behemoth Bash, KOing it as their Ditto Zamazenta KOs my Rillaboom. It's now my Zamazenta and Entei versus their Ditto Zamazenta and their Ogerpon. They decide to double protect this turn to scout out what I do as I double into the Zamazenta Ditto. I try it again, with Zamazenta just missing the KO and their Ditto Zamazenta KOing my Entei. Ivy Cudgel then does very little to Zamazenta. Now I protect the scout out if they protect anything or not, as a double up might KO me. In the end, they both just attack, which is probably the right thing to do. But now that I've put protect into their head, I think they might protect to the Ditto, as it can do the most damage to me. So I body press the Ogerpon instead, which I get right. The Zamazenta protects, and the body press is enough to one-shot their Ogerpon. This should win me the game, but I do protect on the following turn to try and waste one of Ditto's body press PP, because it doesn't get too much of it. They just Behemoth Bash, probably predicting this. Next turn, the body press does do a lot to my Zamazenta, but not enough to KO it, and my Zamazenta can finish them off with a body press, winning me the game. Winning against such a high-rated opponent brings my rating up to a whopping 16,002, which puts me at a placing of 1,015th, about 2 minutes before midnight, which was the end of the tournament. While I technically could start another match, I decided to end it there, not to risk a final loss. This gives me the record of 10 wins, 4 losses, and a final position of 1,026th once the challenge ends. A solid position, and once non-CP earning players are removed from the rankings, I placed a whopping 381st, which earned me 35 championship points. That's more than enough to put me over 200 championship points and getting me that ace trainer status. Yippee! There were some tough battles here in the tournament, but I think that was a solid final showing for my Regulation G team. What I need to do now is prepare to dip my toes into Regulation I. Hopefully, I can see some success in that format as well. I hope you've enjoyed this tournament recap. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.